What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be setting up a 10-gallon planted aquarium. So this is the tank we're going to be setting up. It's, as I said, it's approximately 10 gallons or 36 litres. This is the filter that came with it, although I'm going to be using a sponge filter instead. We've got some planted substrate, we've got sand, we've got hardscape, a couple of different sizes of gravel, small, medium, large. That's some washed sand, and we've got our plants in this bucket here. And where that bucket is, that is where the tank is actually going to be going. So first job, I think, is to get this tank here into position over here. Okay, so the tank is in position, and this is going to be a dirted tank capped with sand. So I'm going to start by adding this Tropica Substrate nutrition for aquariums, and that's basically going to act as our dirt layer. So we'll get that in there. So the dirt's in, and I will just mention at this point, I'm basically following the father fish method, which is an inch of dirt capped with 2 inches of sand. I am going to be scaling that down a little bit though, because this is obviously just a 10-gallon tank, so if I mean 3 inches would be probably a bit too much for this small tank, but basically that's the method I'm going to be following. So I'm now going to add the sand cap on top of the dirt, and I'm going to add about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Right, so sand cap has been added, but what I want to do now is sort of I want to get my hardscape and I want to position that in there and then potentially add a little bit more sand after that. So the hardscape has been added. I haven't covered the base yet because I want to be able to take this hardscape out to do some planting. But yeah, that's all positioned nicely. That's about how much sand I want. There's almost 2 inches of sand there now, just under 2 inches. So I think that should be good. And yeah, I think next I'm probably going to fill the tank up. Right, so we're all filled up and we're looking crystal clear. That looks really good. I've never used sand before as a substrate, so I was pretty excited about using it, and it does look pretty cool. So next job is to have a look at this hardscape here, and what we're going to do is start attaching some plants to it. So I'm going to start by grabbing a bit of this Java moss out the back of this tank. Right, so I've got my moss out. I've got that in this jug to keep it moist, and I'm just going to try attaching it to this little bit of the hardscape here. I've never really done it before, but I'm going to be using this bit of green cotton to attach it. So I'm just going to grab a bit, place it on, and then wind a bit of cotton around, and hopefully that'll work. So that is the moss attached. That went okay. I think once it's in the tank and underwater, I'll probably give some of these little straggly bits to trim off, but we'll see how it looks once it's in the water. But next I want to grab one of these moss balls, because I've got loads of spare moss balls in this tank, and I'm going to try attaching it to this little part of the spiderwood. So we'll see how that goes. Also, whilst you're doing stuff like this, make sure you keep it nicely sprayed down, because you don't want that moss to dry out. So I've got my moss ball out and picked one that seemed like a good size to fit just on here. And to attach that, I'm actually going to use super glue, the instant contact super glue. This is the gel one, and as long as it contains cyanoacrylate, it's safe for aquariums and fish. But yeah, just make sure you get the right one that is aquarium and fish safe. So I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna get this into the tank. Alright, so that's the hardscape in. I think the Java moss and the moss ball look pretty good. I've also covered up the little bit of slate there with a bit of extra sand, so you can't see that anymore. So I think next I'm going to add the sponge filter, because I don't want to accidentally like put plants where that's going, so I'm going to do that. Right, so now we've got the hardscape and the plants attached to it in, and the sponge filter, we're going to start adding some rocks. So these are the different size of rocks that I've got, so I'm just going to start playing around with them and get them in the tank. Right, so that's the rocks in. I'm happy with that. Started with the big rocks and then sort of like worked my way down. I think that looks pretty natural. Happy with that. It's sort of like similar to what I did in the tank up there. And now it's just time to add the plants. So plant wise, I've got some Vallisneria, probably my favourite plant. Got some Anubias, and I've got this little crypt plant, which I've never tried that before, so that'll be quite fun. But I quite like the crinkled leaves on it. So looking forward to trying that. So I'm going to put the plants in now and just try and make it look good. Right, so there we go, looking pretty good. So yeah, obviously I've put the Vallisneria in the back because they're going to be like the tallest plants, and they will also hopefully send out some little runners. I've got the crypt here. I think that should grow fairly big as well, and I just took the Anubias inside that the little bit of spiderwood there, because you don't want to be burying Anubias roots, so that will be perfect there. And the only thing I've got to do now, I've just got to add some dechlorinator. I'm going to hook up the air for the sponge filter, and then I'm going to add one last plant. Right, so that's the sponge filter hooked up and running. I also put the heater in, which I'd pretty much forgotten about. And the only thing left to do now is to add a little bit of Limnophila sessiflora or something like that. I'm just going to use that as a floating plant. I'm just going to pop that up there, and that should help with any excess nutrients that we might potentially have with it being a new setup. Also, I think there's a few snails on there, so it'll get things going in that department as well. And finally, I'm just going to add a handful of snails. There's some Malaysian trumpet snails in there and a couple of other snails, so pop them in there. Oh, he's stuck to my finger already. Come on, off you pop, little guy. There we go. There we go. And there we go, we're all done. DIY hood on. If you want to see how I made that, check out my last video. Filters running, heaters on, snails are in. I could put the fish in now, because the fish that I'm putting in are the fish from this tank up here. However, there's a couple of reasons I'm not going to do that. One, I want to make sure the heater gets up to the correct temperature. And two, I want to just make sure that I've got that nutrient-rich layer all capped off properly. Just want to make sure I don't get any sort of ammonia spike or nutrient spike from that before I put the fish in. But in a few days, the fish from up here will be able to go into their new tank. And whilst I'm here, I do want to give a quick shout out to Father Fish and Mary Paige for inspiring this setup, and I will link both their channels in the description below. So that does bring us to the end of this video. It's been a fun one to make, so I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, drop a like, comment what you think of the setup, and any questions that you might have, and maybe even consider subscribing. That being said, I will see you on the next one.